Hello! Today I'm going to show you how to detect collisions between two rectangles in Android. Strictly speaking, we're only going to look at axis-aligned bounding boxes. These are boxes or rectangles, the edges of which are aligned with the axes of the coordinate system. I'm going to use a setup that I've explained in a previous video. If you haven't watched that yet, do it now. Let's start by creating two rectangles. Rect1 of type rectF, import rectF, let the left side be 100, the top 100, the right 300 and the bottom 300. And rect2 with the left at 100, the top at 400, the right at 400 and the bottom at 600. We also need a paint to draw with on the canvas. Paint equals paint, import paint and apply some changes to its properties. The color should be color black, the style stroke, which means only the borders will be drawn, but no fill, and the stroke width set to 8. In the onDraw function, after the null check of canvas, insert an apply block and draw both rectangles with the paint. Draw rect1 paint, and draw rect2 paint. Now let's run our app. The next step is to make the rectangles movable. For this, I'm going to create a new rect variable called selected rect of type rectF nullable. This is going to be rect1 if we move rect1, rect2 if we move rect2, and null if we don't move any rectangle. In the onTouch event function, when action is action down, which means we've just touched the screen, we're going to check if the touched point is inside one of the rectangles. When it is, we set selected rect to the corresponding rectangle. So selected rect equals when rect1 contains xy, rect1, rect2 contains xy, rect2, and else null. So when the point we've touched is inside rect1, rect1 is assigned to selected rect. When the point is inside rect2, rect2 is assigned to selected rect. And if the point is in neither of them, null is assigned to selected rect. When action is action move, which means we've moved our finger across the screen, we change the position of the selected rectangle. When selected rectangle is rect1 offset 2 xy. If it is rect2 offset 2 xy. Finally, call the invalidate function to update the screen. Since we only want to update the screen after a rectangle has been moved, return immediately when no rectangle is selected. Now we should also move the logcat command above the first return, so that it is always shown after a move event. Let's run our app. If we click in one of the rectangles now, it gets selected, and when we move across the screen, the rectangle is also being moved. Same goes for the other rectangle. The last step is to check for collisions. For this, I'm going to use a Boolean variable called collision. If there's a collision, collision is true. If there's no collision, collision is false. We can use the intersects function of the rectf class to check for collisions. rectf intersects rect1, rect2. But we also have to check for collisions after a rectangle has been moved. So copy this line down to the onTouchEvent function. Before we redraw the screen with invalidate, paste in the check for collision. Let's change the background color if there is a collision. So go to the onDraw function, and if collision, draw the background red, else green. Run your app. Now, when there is a collision, the background changes to red. If you don't want to use the intersects function of rectf, you can write your own. Create a new Kotlin file. Call it collision detection. In it, let's write a function called intersects with two parameters of type rectf. rect1, rectf, and rect2, rectf. Import rectf. On second thought, intersect would be a better name. It shall return true if rect1 left is less than or equal rect2 right, and rect1 right is greater or equal rect2 left, and rect1 top is less than or equal rect2 bottom, and rect1 bottom is greater than or equal rect2 top. Another way to visualize this is to think about the opposite. So if rect1 left is greater than rect2 right, the rectangles are definitely not intersecting. So in this case, we return false. The same for the other 4 cases. If rect1 right is less than rect2 left, they're not intersecting. If rect1 top is greater than rect2 bottom, they're not intersecting. And when rect1 bottom is less than rect2 top, they're not intersecting. Now back in custom view, we can replace the intersect function of rectf with our own. And the same in the onTouch event function here. When we run our app now, it should do the same as before. That's all for today. Goodbye.